The Citizen Sleeper DLC continues with Aki. It's a strange sight given your time spent on the Greenway. You see a greenhouse choked in red dust. It piles up along edges, gathers in curving waves, and is carried by some unseen wind to whirl in front of the glass ceiling. It is a desert in miniature, a captured landscape of iron-rich sediment and unseen life. Beautiful, isn't it? The remark comes from another figure standing at the viewing window so quietly that you hadn't noticed them. Did they just arrive, or were they here before you were? Their cloth-swaddled form reveals little. It is, looks dead, stay silent. They say nothing. You catch a glimpse of a pale face among the thick material, dark eyes glittering in the red reflected light. They turn to you as the dust swirls. Aki. They smile a tight smile. You are not from the flotilla, am I right? Or I'm not from anywhere, or I live on the eye. But that is not where you are from. She stares into the greenhouse. Everyone is from somewhere, whether they wish to be or not. The red dust glitters in her eyes, whether it is a good place to be from or not. Aki gathers her cloak around her shoulders against the cold. What brings you to the wind's long shadow? Wind's long shadow? This ship. Aki looks at you curiously. Do you often wander around ships you don't know the name of? You are a strange one. Aki raises an eyebrow. I don't know whether to report you or send you back to where you came from. She smiles to herself, which is nowhere at all. You glance around the empty corridor, suddenly aware of how quiet it is on the ship. Unlike the other ships you have been on in the flotilla, there is a silent order to the wind's long shadow, and in this moment it feels unsettling. Where is everyone, and what happened here? Aki waves a hand, asleep mostly. It is night on step, and so it is night here. She rubs her shoulders, at least for those of us who can sleep. Stay silent. Aki lets the silence sit, and you hear the wind and dust scratching at the viewing window. You hear a creak as a set of shutters slowly begin to close across the glass ceiling of the greenhouse. As you watch, you feel the dissonance this place has with that word. There is nothing green here, a dust house, perhaps. It takes many systems to preserve this landscape, Aki begins, to simulate the wind, cycle the dust, layer the sand and dirt beneath. You watch the dust swirling, systems that are failing. The flux event, Aki glances at you for a sign of recognition at this turn, is eroding our ability to keep this place alive, to keep these traces of step alive. She smiles to herself, which is ironic because when we left step, the flux had eroded our ability to survive on the moon. Now the situation is reversed. Away from the moon, its ecosystems are as fragile as we were living upon it. Something catches your eye as the shutters darken the dust house. The winds picking away at the dunes begin to reveal something, a web, a network of thick branching forms, and then they close completely and you see nothing in the dark. Soft blue lights flicker on in the corridor, uplighting Aki in cold cyan. You have piqued my curiosity, but I'm so tired, Aki shivers. If you do not have a purpose here on the ship, I recommend finding one, otherwise I'm afraid you'll need to leave. Make yourself useful and perhaps we will get another chance to talk. She turns. I would like that. With that, Aki pads away along the corridor. You stand for a moment in front of the dark dust house, trying to imagine the network of roots under the sand and dust, and then trying to imagine the moon that once housed them. So, I've got some stuff here. Got to deliver the flux data there. There's the character, no upgrade points. Dust houses. To make yourself useful, Aki warned you that if you wanted to learn more about the wind's long shadow, you'll need to prove your usefulness. So the systems repair there. And the one up here is unload supplies. Unfinished business. Sole shipment of supplies sits partially unloaded, the crew absent. If you want to help, the best way would be to finish the job. Unfinished business. That's risky. And this is risky, but this adds 2 to the dice. So I'll start on that one. And all I got left here now is a couple of buttons. So options are pretty limited here. Use that one up to get some energy back. And not quite sure what to do with that one. Use it up. And then end the cycle. Because I'm out of dice. So I got work to do. I've got a good set here. That looks pretty reasonable. So if I go down to here, and that's the wastes. Use that one up to get some energy back. Come back up here. I can get to work. Make yourself useful. That changes that to a 5. And I got a neutral outcome. The other one, that adds a 1 to the... Well, I've got a 6 anyway. Unfinished business. The more you offload supplies into the docking bay, the more attention your efforts seem to be getting. Ah. I might focus on this one. Positive outcome. And positive outcome. So this is nearly done. But I've used up all the dice. So I'll head back here and end the cycle. Back. Get some energy back, then come back up here. That's all of these up here. It adds 2 to the dice, so a 4 becomes a 6. And that's done. I see you've been contributing. Aki stands next to you at the dust house window. I was unsure what to expect when we joined the flotilla on its voyage to the Eye, but after the journey across the system, then the quarantine, and then the flux reaching all the way out here too, Aki stops herself. Thank you, she bows a little. The other ships have only been interested in sending us supplies, but we grow all we need. She gestures at the dust house. What the dust houses need, that is the problem that concerns us. She smiles and turns to you. Shall we go inside? Into the dust house? Is it safe? Or I'd love to. Aki smiles. Come. She taps away at a panel by the window. Seems only fair that after your help with the support systems, you get to see what it is that you are maintaining. Aki leads you to an opening beside the window. You pass through a dark changing room. You notice Aki is sliding on an oxygen mask and visor. She looks at the swirling dust inside it. Inside it's just like the Ember's step. Thin atmosphere, constant dust storms, nothing that will bother you. She passes you a mask. The dust isn't exactly pleasant to inhale, however, so take this. You hold it to your face. She leads you through a short decontamination tunnel with its fizzling panels of purifying light, and then through into the dust house. Immediately the wind and the heat hits you. You feel the rough waves of dust scattering across your face and peer through the amber murk. Your feet slide on shifting piles of sand. Continue. Welcome to Step, or an emulation of it at least. Aki's voice sounds distant, echoing. The terraforming process only managed to provide a limited atmosphere around the moon, one which is slowly escaping. It's been like that since I was born, so I got used to the idea. You catch her bright eyes through the amber dust, so did everything else that lives here. You feel something hard beneath your feet, beneath the sand like a coil of rope. Look down. You instinctively look down and see something pale and twisting poking out of the sand. Aki sees you looking. This is steppe silk. It's one of the plants we established on steppe. She kicks away some red sand. Like any bast fibre, it can be retted and woven into clothes. I'm wearing some made from it myself. It's one of the many species adapted to steppe since the Solheim collapse, which is why it must be preserved. She stares out into the swirling dust. It is as much a refugee as we are, and the dust houses hold hundreds of other species. You look at the pale, unassuming root, threaded quickly through the sand. Aki watches you silently. Had enough? It'll be easier to speak outside. Aki leads you back out through the decontamination tunnel, which blasts the dust from both of you with a burst of metallic tasting air, and into the changing room. Aki hangs up both the masks, patiently awaiting your questions. Why bring plants with you? What happened on Ember's steppe? Aki pauses, pulling her shawl around her. She looks small and pale inside its layers. Steppe was already a doomed world, she sniffs, when Solheim gave the terraforming contract to Sybil. They believed they could build an atmosphere, but the moon's erratic orbit made it impossible to maintain. By the time of the Solheim collapse, the atmosphere was already fading, and Sybil's attention was on Amber's hearth. After the collapse, Sybil fell too. Its researchers scattered across the moons, and any central organisation lost. Since then, my parents' generation worked tirelessly to survive, to adapt what we had to the failing moon. The steppe silk and the other adapted species are the life's work of the steppe's colonies. So when the flux started to collapse, our computer systems corrode and destroy our life support, our water supply, our agriculture, we had to leave. Aki sits heavily on a nearby bench. Soon the only traces of steppe will be on the ship. Aki begins to cry quietly. You are unsure what to do. Where did the flux come from? Sit beside her or stay silent? You sit on a bench beside her as she sobs. You understand why the refugees from steppe are so different. Their world was already dying when the flux arrived. Ember's steppe is a terraformed moon, a partial atmosphere, established colonies, agriculture. And yet when the flux event started, its people had to leave. You think of the eye and the delicate web of decaying systems it rests upon. What hope does a ruined station have against a wave that corrupts, corrodes, and collapses? Aki interrupts your thoughts, rubbing her eyes. Not everyone left. There wasn't room to take all the people and fill the dust houses. My parents, their friends, and many others stayed. She sniffs. We carry the steppe for them. You left people? Perhaps there is hope. Stay silent. We learn not to talk of hope on a dying world. There is meaning for them and any future they can build with the time they have. She stands up. I wanted you to understand the importance of these dust houses and what they contain. She leads you back out into the corridor. If the flux events continue to reach up to the eye, we need to build protections to ensure their safety. Aki meets your eye. What about the people? Aki looks away. We aren't idiots, sleeper. We chose to carry this burden. We will survive. These dust houses are already decaying. I have seen it. She stares into the dust. We had thought that they would last longer, but that last flux event. Help us. Aki looks at you. Please. I will. When you are ready, we will begin the preparations for reinforcing the dust houses. We need to be ready for the next flux event. Aki's eyes shine with the last of her tears. She takes a breath. I will see you soon. Aki drifts away down the corridor, leaving you alone once more at the viewing window, watching the ragged, delicate traces of the moon known as Ember's steppe. So, back out. With unload supplies here. There's things to do there. And that is the flux data place. So here, there's steppe silk care. Improving the dust houses isn't the only way to sustain the steppe silk. And there's dust house shielding. Risky, danger. Both options add +1 to the dice. So I'm going to have a couple of 6s here, so I'm going to do both. And preservation is advanced. If the dust houses are to preserve their closed biomes, they will need shielding against the flux and protecting from their slow decay. Used up my dice. So I go home and I end the cycle. Not yeah. I got to decide whether to re-roll these. Risky. I think I'll leave it, and if I use one of those to get some energy back. I'll farm the stacks. Come back up here. Start working on this. Maybe. So I risk losing some energy on this one. Preservation is up. That one goes in there. Preservation is advanced. I'm out of dice again. So end the cycle again. Good dice this time. Should be able to make some progress. So come in here. Stop civil care, and we're done. You and Aki stand side by side at the viewing window in silence. The dust swirls and you glimpse the twisted root systems of the steppe silk through the ochre haze. After all these cycles, you feel a strange connection to a world on which you have never set foot. Aki shifts from foot to foot. She seems restless, eager to speak, but unsure of what to say. We did it. Or they look good. Aki smiles at you warmly. They do. She pauses and turns back to the window. What is the value of all this, she asks suddenly, of preserving a world we have left behind? History, heritage, conservation. Aki is silent for a moment. These creatures should be protected, yes, but for us their conservation is conditional. We keep them alive because we need to use them. I can't pretend we are conservators when we harvest as much as we were able. Aki paces away, lost in thought. I'm grateful to you for helping protect the dust houses, for ensuring their slide into decay is delayed, even averted, but now I find myself at an impasse. The stability of the dust houses changes things. It makes me aware of how blinkered we have been. Aki stops to look at you, her posture somehow different. If the ecosystems of steppe, if its people cannot grow to meet the future, why preserve it? She frowns. Are we just slaves to the preservation of what came before? Not slaves, inheritors. You can change. I don't understand. Aki nods, but the weight of this inheritance is heavy. Aki comes close, holds your hands in hers. We must change to live, she smiles. I have seen that in you. The steppe, these people, this ship should serve more than heritage, than history. They should serve the future. She takes a breath. There are those in the flotilla that need clothes, that need food, that can benefit from the gifts of the steppe's ecosystem. I want you to invite them. Can you do that for me? Of course. I know that Soul sent you, she smiles. You can tell him Aki, captain of the wind's long shadow, invites all the people of the flotilla to come. I will. She nods. Aki steps away. You want to know about the flux? No. About its purposes, its origins? She smiles. You wish to protect your home as we could not. I'm afraid I don't have much to tell you. It's an exotic wave of sorts, an energy that passes through matter. It shifts the very charged particles which run through our electrical systems. It is possible to shield against it, as you would radiation, as we have done with the dust houses, but only while it is weak. The flux event here was much like the first ones we felt on Ember's Step, localized, destructive, but bearable. But in time its strength grew. I don't know if it will be the same here, but she pauses. It is coming from the center of the system, from the close orbit of Helion star H1. That is all we could uncover. She is silent for a moment, unsure of what to add. I'm sorry I cannot offer more, but you are always welcome on this ship. She smiles. I hope I will see you when the others come. She squeezes both your hands. I hope this ship, these dust houses, can be more than a museum. I hope they can be a home. With this, she turns and leaves, and you feel that word home resonating within you like a struck bell. So that's done, and I turn my attention to this one up here. To unload supplies. +1. So I unload the supplies. That's complete. There is a loose crowd around the supplies you have unloaded in a tense mood brewing among them. You sit nearby on the edge of the shuttle's docking tunnel, resting. Further away, crews from Ember Song continue their lives as usual, coming and going, trading, discussing. There is a quiet efficiency to the hub, set up as a common space for the swarm of small ships from Ember Song that are part of the flotilla. Unlike Hearth or Step, there is no one capital ship for this moon's refugees, just a mass of individuals travelling in concert. We told Hearth that we didn't want their scraps. The jeering voice comes out of the small crowd nearby. You turn to see a gaunt, pale man wearing the industrial work gear you have seen many of the Song refugees wearing. You hear me? These supplies are to help, or stay silent. He smirks. Oh, how noble of you, coming out here to help us singers. There is a rumble of anger around the crowd. We agreed to join the flotilla for joint protection. We did not agree to Ember's Hearth using the flotilla to secure their control of the moons. You realize Petra is addressing the crowd as much as he is addressing you. With the cordon down, our crews are more than able to acquire what is needed from the eye, what is owed as restitution for keeping us restrained. He pats one of the crates you unloaded. What we need, we will take. Sol wants to cooperate, or I have no stake in this. Sol is a farmer. Even the people of Sol know that he was simply the sole survivor of Hearth's leadership. His authority means nothing. Petra looks around the crowd. Hearth think they can buy us, but we remember the past. A rumble of agreement runs through the crowd. He smiles at them. Take the supplies if you wish, of course. We are not wasteful. Petra approaches you directly. The crowd tentatively moves forward, and by the time he reaches you, they are already dragging away crates and distributing the contents. I'm not one for shooting the messenger, Sleeper, says Petra as he approaches, but we cannot concede to Hearth here, not for a moment. I don't understand, or leave me out of it. I can see that. Petra sits beside you on the docking tunnel's lip. What was your plan, Sleeper? Unload the supplies and wait for someone to start throwing them back at you. He nods at the crowd rifling through the crates because that's what was about to happen. So I should thank you? Petra bows a little. My pleasure. What do you think happened to the crew of this shuttle? He shakes his head. They were chased out of this place. What is happening here? Or why do they hate Hearth? We are maintaining our independence, he smiles. Do you know anything about Ember's moon, Sleeper, or were you planning to wander into this flotilla totally blind? An objective outsider offering help. He rolls his eyes. I know a little. A little is the same as nothing. I'm going to assume you know the basics. The gas giant Ember has 7 moons. The 3 biggest are Ember's Step, Ember's Song, and Ember's Heart. He winks. We can cover the 4 sisters next session. Step was the first to be settled, a contract old Solheim gave to the terraformers, Civil Systems, when they first claimed the Helion system. That's way back when. Step was a testing ground, and like most testing grounds, it didn't turn out too well. A partial atmosphere slowly slowing off each orbit, a dysfunctional ecosystem, and a whole load of dust-clogged settlers. The place is a miserable desert long past its best before date. So Sybil moved to Hearth, where they redoubled their efforts. The subsurface ocean and some balmy tidal heating helped, allowing them to build a real atmosphere, a real habitable world, a fact that the typical Hearth colonist won't ever let you forget. How did Sybil achieve such a thing, you might wonder? Well, that's where we come in. It's the same old rule of surrogacy, the one humanity built our universe around. Petra claps a hand to his chest in mock pride. My moon, Ember Song, is a sulfur-soaked rock, covered in volcanoes, tidally heated by its inner orbit to sweltering temperatures. Exactly the kind of crucible you need to fuel a terraforming project. Energy industry fuel Song provided the raw materials for Hearth. Petra grimaces willingly on. And a crucible requires people to run it, as singers born into a flaming pit, and asked to stoke it so others might live in a paradise in the making. That's what we had to endure until Solheim brought everything down. Petra rattles off this speech from memory, and you wonder how many times he has delivered it. No Solheim, no contract, no Sybil, and no Sybil meant 3 moons suddenly independent. Petra shakes his head. It was a war, Sleeper, sometimes hot, sometimes cold, and unsurprisingly, Hearth and Steppe came out of it better than us. Yet, Petra holds up a hand, they need us, Sleeper always have, and so we are the linchpin, we are the centre around which the moons orbit, not swirling ember. We've resisted takeovers, sieges and expansions, and now we'll resist this. Half the people on these ships think the flux was caused by Hearth, intentionally or otherwise, and I have to say some cycles I agree, so before you come here to hand out supplies like a good soldier, maybe educate yourself. What does that matter now, but you abandoned Sol? Petra shakes his head. Do you forgive crimes against yourself so easily, Sleeper? Would you return to the bottom of Essen Arp if they sent someone to collect? Petra stares at the crowd. Don't presume to judge us. I want you to imagine what it was like to try to live on airless volcanic rock when every system that sustains you starts shutting down. He spits and wipes the sleeve across his mouth. We abandoned nothing. Some stayed, others left, but we will reclaim Ember as soon as the flux fades or ends. We've weathered worse. Don't you need the supplies? The flotilla should be united, or I understand. Do you now? Petra meets your eye. Well, perhaps you'll stop running errands for Hearth then. I won't keep you from docking access, Sleeper. No one here has the authority for that. But watch yourself here. Try to remember that the eye is just another in the long list of people who have tried to control us. I understand you are too stubborn, or stay silent. Petra sighs. Look, we are many, and we have many needs. Ships come to this docking axis for repairs, for requisitions, friendship. You can provide these as well as any singer. If you want to help, help in your own name, Sleeper, not in that of Hearth. Petra shakes his head. Carry that name here, and you will lose all trust. But as we are, act in your own name alone. Petra puts a hand on your shoulder and stands. I hope I didn't just waste my time here, Sleeper, and with that he walks away back to the shrinking crowd that is distributing the last of the supplies among the crews present. You watch them pass the food and water between them, no signs of conflict between the crews, just a careful distribution of resources. Petra chats with a few crews, each of them casting looks in your direction, ones that reveal little about the singer's intentions. You stand, it seems the tensions on the flotilla run much deeper than you expected. This won't be easy. So there's the docking axis, supply spores, or a shipmite core. The singers will only trust you if you act independently of Hearth. Fulfilling supply requests is a good start. So, I do have one shipmite core on me in my inventory right now. But I need to look around and see what is out there. Do I have to do something in the waste? Or my only option there is gather scrap. Aha, the flux node, there it is. I'm going to need a 6, or a 5, or a 4 to do this. Aha, so. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I re-rolled. I got a 6. So let's get in there and do that. Data extracted. Let's come out of that place. I think this is what they were looking for. Up here. Go to the data tab, there it is. Deliver the flux data. It is done. Sleeper, come look at this. Peak is poring over one of the displays of the makeshift decoding suit they have set up on the climbing Briar's cargo bay. On the screen, a clump of data pathways like an ingrown root ball has started to untangle. This is an existing node corrupted by the flux event. It's totally twisted up. They glance at you to check you are listening. But inside you watch as the unwinding pathways leave behind patterns of negative spaces, like shadows staying behind despite their caster leaving. There's a whole other data set. Peak's eyes shine bright in the pale screen light. The flux event somehow seeds this data deep into the gaps in the node, wrapping them around it. Why? What's in there? I don't get it. What's in there? Not sure. Peak frowns. It isn't being very cooperative. You watch the screen, the pattern of shadows becoming obvious now, as each layer of pathways is pulled away. The flux event itself really did a number on unprotected nodes like this one. Most of the EI's systems are screened against radiation and interference, but these exposed nodes. Peak makes a ripping motion with their hands torn apart. Peak points to a thick tangle of threads on the screen. Look here. It looks like it's been tangled purposefully, but it's actually that all the points within the node have been randomly rearranged. It's as if the node was a bag of ball bearings and the flux shook them. The pathways tried to account for the rearrangement once the system came back on, hence the tangle. Peak pauses as the node continues to unwind. Although Peak muses, it was less like shaking a bag of ball bearings and more like making them all simultaneously occupy a superposition of every possible position in the bag before locking them back into a new configuration. They smile sheepishly, but that's a technicality. Does any of that help us? So what is the flux? We know it is a wave, one with exotic effects, that's all. Peak runs a hand through their hair. The question is not so much what flux is, but what is causing it. Where is it coming from? Peak turns away from the screen, meeting your eye, and there's something else. They pause. Have you spoken with the refugees? Yes. Peak lowers their voice instinctively. What they are reporting: massive systems failures, cascading collapses of life support, of terraforming systems, total data corruption. Peak swallows. The flux shouldn't do that. It can fundamentally rearrange the structure of systems, especially those poorly shielded, but totally collapsing heavy-duty industrial systems, fail-safes and all, that doesn't make sense. Those kind of systems are built for deep space, for solar flares and radiation. The flux might penetrate them, but any reconfiguration should have been repairable. Peak looks back at the screen where the decoding node lies almost fully open. A shadow pattern of the negative spaces that existed within its scrambled interior darkens the screen, like a set of bruises showing the pattern of the object that made them. I need to look into something. I have an idea what might be causing this wave, triggering the flux, but I need time to research it. Can I help? What is it? Peak shakes their head. I'm sorry, Sleeper, but I want to keep this to myself for now. If you need something to do, the flotilla could surely do with the help. From what I've heard from Ash, things are tense there. Where is? Peak glances around the bay. Must be out. I've been focusing on this, so I can't say I've noticed. Although the quiet is nice, they smile. Give me some time, Sleeper. Peak turns back to their console. I'll have some answers soon enough, I hope. You take one last glance at the uncoiling node as you leave, the dark shapes it leaves behind somehow troubling. You try to shake them from your mind. There are things to be done elsewhere. There are things to be done elsewhere. 34 minutes on the clock. See you next time.